Hi everybody, today we're going to be making these really cute book covers. You can use any kind of blank book that you have. This is just like a Moleskine book that I had, or you can find just whatever little blank book that you want to embellish to do this with. Today for our sample I'm going to use this smaller book. It's just got kind of some lightweight cardboard for the cover. I am going to end up sewing through it. If your book cover has is really thick, then don't sew through it, but you still can embellish it using these things. You just would skip the sewing part. It'll still stay on if you don't sew. For this project, you're gonna need a little blank book, Heat and Bond. This is Heat and Bond. It comes on a bolt like that, and you iron it on and it helps fabric stick to each other. You're gonna need that, and you're gonna need some fabric. Today, I'm going to have this stripy fabric as my background, and then I'm gonna cut out a few little strawberries to embellish on the background of my book. You're also going to need a pencil to trace your book. You're going to need fabric scissors and little snippy scissors and an ironing board if you're sewing, a sewing machine at the very end. Let's do this thing. The first thing I'm gonna think about is covering the back for the background of this book. So what I've done is cut out a piece of this Heat and Bond, and I just want to make sure it's bigger than the book cover. Same thing with my fabric. This is obviously bigger than my book cover too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fuse. When I say fuse, I mean like when I iron it, it's gonna kind of melt the glue that's on the Heat and Bond and stick it to the fabric. That's what I mean when I say fuse. I'm gonna cut my fabric that's about the same size as my Heat and Bond. A little bigger is better, because when you iron, you don't ever want the iron to actually go directly on this shiny side, which is gonna be the sticky side. What I'm gonna do is go over to the ironing board and iron those two things together. My fabric doesn't necessarily have a right side and a wrong side. It's kind of the same on both sides. If you have a fabric that's a right and wrong side, like this fabric, make sure that you're ironing the Heat and Bond to the wrong side of the fabric so that you can stick that right side of the fabric to the book. So let's go over to the ironing board and iron that on. All we're gonna do is iron the Heat and Bond, so kind of the bumpy side, so you can feel that one side is kind of papery and this side is kind of bumpy. So the bumpy side needs to be ironed to the wrong side of your fabric. There's a little bit of extra Heat and Bond right there sticking out. I wanna make sure I don't touch the iron to that, because that's gonna stick on the iron, and we don't want that. I think that feels pretty stuck. Ooh, it's hot. Yep, that's stuck on there. Now we're gonna go back and trace the book cover on there and then cut that out. Since I want this on the front of my book, I'm gonna open my book up and I'm gonna place it down on my fabric that's bonded to my Heat and Bond. I'm gonna trace the front cover of my book. Hopefully my pencil mark is gonna show up. If you don't want the cover to be covering the whole entire thing, you can make this a little smaller too, like I did with this one. This one, the cover doesn't completely cover the whole entire cover, and that's fine. Do whatever you want to, whatever you think looks good. Now I'm gonna take some fabric scissors and cut out that shape that I just traced. I'm cutting through all the layers. This way you're getting Heat and Bond that is exactly the same shape as you need, and you're cutting only one time with all those layers. If you try to cut your fabric and then try to cut the Heat and Bond, it gets a little hard to match it exactly up. So I like to bond it first. I'm just gonna cut that straight, make sure that's gonna fit on my book. It is gonna fit on my book. The next thing I'm gonna do is decide what embellishment I wanna decorate my cover with. So I decided I'm gonna use these strawberries. Like I just said, instead of trying to cut out a few little strawberries and cut the Heat and Bond that's gonna be the exact same size as my strawberries, I'm gonna fuse some Heat and Bond onto the strawberries and then cut all of those layers out all at the same time. Makes it a heck of a lot easier. I went ahead and fused the Heat and Bond to the wrong side of my strawberry fabric, and I am gonna just take my fabric scissors. I'm not gonna cut them exactly on the line. You can cut them out however you want it to look. You can get really intricate with this, or you can just do it generally. I'm gonna cut out a pink strawberry, and I'm gonna cut out a white strawberry, like that. I only like a few things to embellish my book, but you can put as much on there as you want. Definitely make it your own. You could take some solid fabric and cut out letters and spell something out or whatever you want. So how about maybe I'll do one more pink one. I like those pink ones. I have 3 strawberries on there. This is why you put the heat and bond on there first. You can just cut out the shape and cut both of the layers out. All right, I'm happy with that. Now I'm gonna be like, oh, let's see. I want my strawberries to look maybe like that. Just kind of get a general plan of how you want them to be, and then what you're gonna do is peel off the paper backing of your embellishment. Basically what we're doing is we're decorating the whole front first, and then we'll go at the very end and iron that onto the book. Just makes things a little easier. And sometimes it's a little tricky. You just have to kind of get the edge of it, and you peel it off. It feels a little bit sticky. You can see kind of how it's a little bit shiny too. And I'm gonna put that strawberry there. Is that how I want it? I can kind of pick these up and move them around. They're tiniest bit sticky, but you can arrange this however you want to before you iron it, because when you go and iron it, that's the thing that's gonna stick it to this background. So let's go iron them down. Now I have my strawberries in the place that I want them. I'm just gonna iron them down like that. They stick pretty fast, so you don't have to be a crazy person. Iron them down, and they're stuck on there now. So now what I'm gonna do is flip my book open and peel the paper off of the cover. Again, you can see that that's kind of shiny. Make sure you open your book up like that so you're only ironing on the cover. And I'm gonna place that on the cover of my book, however I like it, and iron that down. And it just sticks right on there. And you might wanna hold the iron on there just for a little while, get all the corners, make sure it really sticks on there. There's the cover of my book. Like I mentioned before, I'm actually gonna go and sew that on too, just because I wanna have some stitches showing. This will stay just like that, and you can be done at this point. I'm just gonna show you how you would sew this on if you wanted to sew. I'm gonna show you how to just sew on this book if you want to. Again, this is just to kind of make sure that your fabric is really stuck on there. If you're not gonna do that, totally fine, because that's pretty well stuck. I just kind of like how it looks with stitches. I'm gonna go to a zigzag stitch. You can do whatever stitch you want to. Make sure you have a pretty good needle in there, maybe at least a medium-sized needle, so that would be a size 12 to 16 I would recommend, because it is pretty thick to go through this paper. I'm gonna start it out. I'm just gonna use the hand wheel just to start it. I'm not gonna back stitch because I want it to look as clean as I possibly can. You can make this messy. This is yours. You make it however you want. Makes kind of crazy sounds sometimes when you're sewing through paper. Don't let it freak you out. And you can use the hand wheel as much as you want. And I'm gonna stop right there. Trim my threads. We're good to go. That's it. So that's how you do that. I would recommend, if you decide to sew on the sewing machine and sew through the book, you might want to change your needle, because this does make the needle pretty dull, and sometimes it gets glue from the heat and bond built up on it. After you do something like this, I would recommend changing your needle. That's it. So go make some cute books. I love to see what you guys make. Thanks.